What's up? This is Ready Break. I'm Brandon Brewer. Joining me tonight in the huddle, we got a pair of Zachs. We got Zach Billings, the executive producer of this here show, and Zach Massey. Zach, what's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
What's going on?
Not too much, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to talk about what your specialty is and what area of the sports world you're kind of taking on as your personal niche. But before we get into any of that sports talk, I do want to address the celebrity death that took place this week, and that is the death of Bob Saget. We are all of the age to where Bob Saget, at some point in our lives, was a pretty important person on our televisions, whether it be growing up watching Full House to his later stint on America's Funniest Videos to even watching him appear weekly on Entourage. And I know some of us has probably even seen some of his raunchy stand-up comedies as well. But this guy, 65 years old, and he's gone. So that's a pretty significant loss to kick off 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big shocker, and also apparently he had just finished doing a show that night and was just in his hotel room, and I think the sheriff or whoever said that there was no signs of foul play or drug use. So I guess either we'll find out or we won't. But yeah, that's a sad one.
Yeah, it was here in Orlando, Florida as well, so not too far away from where I'm currently at. So I had no clue that he was even traveling around doing shows at the time. Yep. But what I was aware of this week was the fact that we had a crazy NFL gauntlet. Whenever they announced that they wanted to do an 18-week regular season in the NFL, this is exactly what that brain trust dreamed up. They wanted to have the 18th game of the season actually mean something, and boy, did it. Both of the conferences had spots remaining to clinch to get into the playoffs. So we had do or die games left and right. And we even had one crazy dream scenario that we talked about last week, Zach, that if the Jags happened to upset the Colts, that it would create a huge snowball effect that could ultimately lead to some other teams getting into the playoffs that you might not expect. Well, lo and behold, the Jags shocked the world and actually beat the Colts pretty handily as well. And by some stroke of luck, with the Lions also beating the Packers, they still get to maintain the number 1 overall draft pick, and the Jags are on the clock, and they ended their season in high fashion.
What a wild year for them. I know you guys are local. Did you get to see that game?
Yeah, my wife and I were actually out to eat on Sunday, and we were watching it at the sports bar, and we were like, wow, the Jags are actually winning this game. This is ridiculous. Like, I was going a little bit crazy because the guy beside me was a huge Jags fan, and we were just talking the whole time. And there were some Steeler fans that were in the bar, and they were going nuts too, because with the Jags knocking off the Colts, that opened up the smallest sliver of a door for them to sneak into the playoffs. And of course, we know from the Sunday night football game, which was an absolute classic, the Steelers did get into the playoffs thanks to the Chargers losing. So crazy. Insane day of football. Massey, what did you think about the games that took place on Sunday?
I mean, to be honest, the only thing I could really hate on was the fact that I had a championship game in fantasy, up by 15 points last night with 10 minutes left in the Chargers game. I had Eckler. My dad had Herbert. And I'm like, okay, Herbert throws the pick and game's over. I'm like, I win. I wake up in the morning, end up losing by 5 points. So,
oh no.
Yep.
That's a terrible way to go out, thinking that you had the championship locked up, and then all of a sudden you wake up and, oh, nope, it was taken from you in the middle of the night. That pretty much sums up how the Chargers must feel too, because they had to just go in and win. That's all they had to do. Win and you're in. And then whenever the Colts lost, then it was just like, okay, just tie and you're in. And then, of course, this game, the Chargers were down 2 scores. They score a touchdown, get the 2-point conversion, get the ball back, score again, tie the game, force overtime. The two teams exchanged field goals in overtime, and as literally as the seconds ticked off the clock, the Raiders scored a last second field goal to win it. And it came out today that some of the Raiders players were like, yeah, we were content with just letting the clock expire and taking the tie. But then whenever the Chargers coach Brandon Staley called that timeout, they were like, well, all right, I guess we'll kick it.
Wow, crazy.
Pretty big turn of events for them. But it was a great day of football. Of course, over in the NFC side of things, we saw the Saints. They looked like they were set to go into the playoffs, and the Rams were defeating the 49ers pretty soundly. And then all of a sudden, the 49ers stormed back, won that game, swept the season series, and sent the Saint home packing. They're now going to be watching the playoffs with us on the couch.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a pretty big shocker too, because I remember, people talking about whether or not they were going to put Trey Lance in or not. And I think Jimmy G maybe had a little bit of fire lit under him and surprised me, at least. I expected them to be pretty mediocre, but they do have an amazing wide receiver in Deebo Samuel. So I think that helps them significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Deebo has been one of those guys that's really picked up a lot of the slack for that team this year, and he's done a tremendous job. And that team has a bright future. They are going to be a tough out in the playoffs because they can run the ball, they can pass the ball, and they've got a pretty good defense.
Right.
Harvey saying that the Saints fans forever beef with the Rams. Of course, that big time non-pass interference call a couple years ago that knocked the Saints out of the playoffs when the Rams were on their march to a Super Bowl appearance. But yeah, the Rams let the Saints down again. Crazy.
It's crazy. Yep.
What else did you guys see this weekend that you want to talk about that was noteworthy from that slate of NFL games on Sunday?
You got anything, Zach?
I mean, kind of piggyback, kind of just proved to me that Stafford is still Stafford. He's still throwing interceptions. He's not being consistent with the ball, and he's just letting it fly, hoping that he's got Odell out open. I don't know. To me, you can't trust him.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of his statistical best seasons of his career. He was second or third in the league in passing yards, so he had a really great season. A wide receiver on his team had the triple crown in wide receiving: most yards, most touchdowns, and most receptions. So a lot of that has to come back to the fact that Stafford did his thing all season long. He did just have that moment where he broke down at the end, and he was beat up a little bit in this game, so maybe that has something to do with it, but he did underthrow that last pass, and that's what led to them being defeated.
Right. I'll be interested to see how they do in the playoffs and if he can, kind of rise to the occasion, because I mean, he's never really had that experience before. So I think he has all the talent in the world around him. But yeah, I think if you make mistakes like that, that's pretty rough. So I think just time will tell for them.
Yeah. And a lot of these games on Sunday, the starters didn't go out there and play and all that stuff, typical of the last game of the season. But we did have some good games and some potential seeding that happened. With the Tampa Bay Bucks needing to win, they ended up securing up that second seed because of some of these other teams that dropped. Because of that Rams game, they moved up to the second seed, and now they at least get home field advantage unless they have to go to Green Bay. So that's a big one for the Bucks as well. I know Massey's a Bucks fan, so I'm sure he was pretty stoked on that.
So it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. What are the Bucks going to do, going forward in the playoffs? They do have some injury concerns. Of course, Godwin's not going to be there. Mike Evans, he gets banged up every game, it seems like. Leonard Fournette's on the IR. Of course, the Antonio Brown situation, that is a whole conversation in and of itself. But are they going to be able to repeat, or are the cards just stacked against them at this point?
I mean, I'd say my gut is that yes, they're going to repeat, but that's as a biased fan.
Sure.
I mean,
I think the Pats are going to win it all.
It's any given Sunday. I mean, anything can happen. I know with the Bucks, they're going to have a lot of extra support coming out of Scotty Miller, Perryman, definitely a lot more from Gronk. I mean, to me, the biggest thing, like even venturing back from last season, was the whole picture of playoff Lenny. He started to heat up last year, the playoffs. A couple of weeks ago, he started to heat up again, and then he got hurt. But I don't know. To me, it's always been the fact of why have we just ditched Ronald Jones? The biggest thing for Tom Brady is start the run game. Give him time, give him space, and go from there. And that's my thing.
It's a good point. Ronald Jones is a serviceable running back, and he can definitely carry the team and fill in where Leonard Fournette isn't. It's I don't know why they even really needed to go out and get Lenny when they did. I guess he was floating around out there, so why not? But Ronald Jones is more than serviceable, and he will carry the ball a lot. And if he's able to get going, set up that play action. Of course, we all know Brady is the check down king. He's going to be able to do a little play action, check down to Gronk, and that's usually a quick recipe for 6. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see. All season long, Tom has been dependent on having all of the weapons that he's had, 5,000 plus yards season, because he's had more weapons than ever this year. And then now all of a sudden going into the playoffs, he's down some very, very skilled weapons. So it will be interesting to see how he bounces back in the playoffs from that and how other defenses respond.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Tom is difficult to defend, but at the same time, the playbook is right there, but it's just all about execution against him, because I think Tom has just a totally different gear that he can switch into when it comes time to show up for playoff games. And he's been off, I think, for a few games in the season, but man, better watch out for him come playoff time. But like you said, missing those weapons is a big deal. So maybe there's a next man up mentality, but I think a lot is going to ride on Tom being just top notch.
Yep. No, I agree. What is your biggest takeaway as far as these playoff teams that lost on Saturday or Sunday? The Patriots, they lost to the Dolphins for the second time this season, and they were not able to solve the Brian Flores led Dolphins, and then subsequently Brian Flores was fired. Why, I don't know, but it is what it is. The Packers, they trotted out their second stringers. We know Jordan Love is not the answer to who's going to replace Aaron Rodgers, because he couldn't even go out and finish beating the Lions. Sucks to be him. Yeah. And then like teams like the Titans, they had their hands full with the Houston Texans. So some of these teams that are playoff bound, the Chiefs, they got lucky against the Broncos and picked up a fumble and returned it to the house as seconds expired in that game to win that one on Saturday. So a lot of these playoff teams, they weren't really firing on all cylinders this weekend.
Yep, that's a good point. I think for some teams to have the break and to get the rest is good. And for other teams, when you stop that momentum, it's hard to build it back up and start that engine again. So some of these teams are probably going to get beat up a little bit. I think maybe some can come back in their second halves rather. But I think you probably see some shockers come the wild card. And I think for a lot of teams, whenever you are at this point in the season, yes, you're banged up, but so is everybody else. And I think if they can keep on pace, they have a little bit of an advantage. But again, that's something that kind of is personal for per player and stuff like that, and depending on how severe injuries are. But they always say at this point of the season that basically everybody has something that they're dealing with.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, we saw the Bengals, they trotted out some backup quarterback that had never made an NFL start so that they could give Burrow a chance to rest and recover from the hit that he took last week. So you're going to see that a lot in Week 18. And Massey, that makes me kind of question why your league has a championship on the last week of the season. I always try to finish it up before the last game of the season because you know that you're going to have those weird situations where guys are sitting out. But it is what it is. Today was a day in NFL that a lot of coaches and GMs dreaded when the season started going the way that it did. For those of us in the sports world, it's collectively known as Black Monday, the Monday after the regular season ends, when all the coaches that were on losing teams pretty much get the axe. We already knew about a couple of the teams out there, the Raiders and the Jags, that were without their head coach. They were playing with an interim for the past few weeks, but out of the 32 NFL teams, there are now 6 that do not have a head coach. We found out today that the Broncos, the Vikings, the Bears, and shockingly, the Miami Dolphins have moved on from their respective coaches and are now entering this market of trying to find the new coach. And several of those same teams have also canned their GMs to go along with that coach. I think I speak for the group here whenever I say that Brian Flores from the Dolphins is probably the most shocking of all of them. Yeah. What did you guys think earlier today when you saw that Flores was fired?
Go ahead, Zach.
I mean, I was shocked. I mean, he's been putting up decent numbers. I mean, with the Tua streak towards the end of the season, I felt he was finally getting into a groove of things, starting to get the hang. And I mean, to be honest, I was just shocked. I did not see it coming.
Yeah, same for me. I don't really understand the move here because who's going to come and replace him and try to pick up from where he left off? Because you've got questions with Tua. He's not 100% reliable, obviously. And I think he was, like you said, finally getting into the swing of things and getting a rhythm going. Very strange decision here. And I think that's just par for the course for poor organizations, poorly ran organizations. This was just a terrible move. They absolutely could have capitalized on this season. Obviously missed the playoffs, but they're building. And I definitely think they have something going. Jalen Waddle is electric. They finally have a good defense. Tua might be a question, but I think you can either figure that out or maybe pick up somebody on the slew of quarterbacks that are probably going to be free agents at the end of the season. Bad move, and I think this is just par for the course for those kind of organizations that are always in a rotation of head coaches.
Yeah, you don't have to be an all-star quarterback to go out there and lead a team to the Super Bowl. You just have to be a successful game manager. I mean, guys like Joe Flacco and Trent Dilfer have Super Bowl championships on their resume. I wouldn't necessarily consider them Pro Bowlers every year.
Right.
But that organization, like you guys alluded to, they had won 8 of their last 9 games this season. They went on a stretch of 7 in a row that they had won. And it did seem like they were kind of getting the feel for this season. I think the problem with Flores is that's kind of been the MO for the past 3 years in Miami, is they start out really slow and kind of bury themselves, and then they try to dig out later in the season. Last year, they were a 10-win team that missed the playoffs because the Browns happened to get hot late. But it was because the Dolphins started out so slowly that they had to even rally to get to that 10 wins. And it's just a product of mismanagement and the fact that they haven't been sold on who's going to really lead that ship. If you remember last year, they would have Tua in, and then they would make an audible and put in Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he would come in and close out the game. This year was the first time that they really let Tua go, and this was his team. This is what he was supposed to do. And, he started out slow, didn't really have a good feel at first, but then he got let's say he matured throughout the season. He got much better at managing the game. And that's all you can ask out of a young quarterback, is that they can be good game managers and protect the football. I put up the post in the huddle group page where it said I wanted the custom jersey for Tua turned the ball over, and Jared, a resident Dolphins fan, was quick to point out he really didn't have that many interceptions. He actually protected the ball fairly well for the season. It was just poor execution on those clutch downs, like not getting third downs and then having to punt the ball. It wasn't him throwing interceptions that really cost him.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
And I think they'll be back. And, the owner of the Miami Dolphins came out today and said that he was not interested in doing anything for Deshaun Watson, that he's going to wait, find his coach, and then they'll make those kind of decisions together going forward as to how the team is going to be organized. I don't know. I think if Deshaun Watson's available and you've got what it takes to get him, then you pull the trigger, because that's a guy that can really make an impact on your roster and on your organization. But it is what it is. We'll see what happens with the Miami Dolphins. We do know that now that Matt Nagy and GM Ryan Pace of the Chicago Bears are out. Also in the NFC North, Mike Zimmer and the GM of 20 years, Rick Spielman, are out for the Vikings. So, we talk a lot about the potential of Aaron Rodgers leaving Green Bay. Why would he want to leave at this point whenever there are two teams in his own division that are forced to rebuild? Those pretty much easy wins every year.
Right. The grass is getting greener and greener for him.
I think he definitely stays there in Green Bay at the end of this playoff run that the Packers are on, win or lose.
Yeah.
And then, we'll also mention the Broncos, the Jags, and the Raiders all looking for coaches. And the Giants GM, Dave Gettleman, announced that he retired today. So I would say Joe Judge is probably on the hot seat as well. When a new GM comes in, are you going to keep the old regime, or are you going to clean house and bring in your own guys? I think he's probably on the hot seat.
Yeah, especially because they had a terrible, terrible year this year too.
Yeah, they didn't finish the way that they wanted to, that's for sure. Which of these teams to you guys has the most appeal? If you're a head coach and you're trying to move up, maybe you're an offensive defensive coordinator, or you're a former head coach looking to get back into the mix, which of these teams has the most allure to you? Which one do you want to go to?
What do you think, Zach?
I'd probably go Vikings, to be honest. I mean, you've got Dalvin Cook, you still have Thielen, you still have Jefferson, who had a great sophomore season. I mean, the biggest thing is, you look at Kirk Cousins, kind of inconsistencies there. It can still be coached. You still got a decent defense. I think you have solid ground to build a team off of.
I like that assessment. If I were to move into the Vikings organization, I would want somebody else other than Kirk Cousins throwing the ball for me. You do also have to contend with the Packers if Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams stick around. That's rough, but I do think they have a lot of talent on that team. I think the Dolphins are also another good spot where, depending on what they do and if they listen to you, and if you have the talent as a head coach to try to bring everything together, they have a lot of talent on that team too. Those would be my top two for sure. I completely stay away from the Bears, at least. Giants, probably stay away from them too, honestly. But yeah, I think Vikings is a good option, and Dolphins for sure.
I think I agree with our friend Ethan here, who's commenting in here saying the Las Vegas Raiders for sure. I mean, of those teams mentioned, they're the only playoff team.
That's a fair point.
So, I mean, you've got them. They've got weapons out there. They've got Darren Waller, probably one of the biggest game-changing tight ends in the entire league. Derek Carr has proved that he is at least a good quarterback in the league. You've got Josh Jacobs out there who can be reliable as a running back. Their defense is pretty well sound. I think I go with the Raiders. And other than them, I might be interested in taking that Jacksonville Jags job. You've got the number one pick from last year in Trevor Lawrence. You didn't even get to see your other first-round draft pick in Travis Etienne this year. Next year, you also have the number one overall pick. They looked like they're starting to get something going. They have a lot of trade capital. So if you go in and Shad Khan, the owner, gives you the checkbook to say, hey, make something happen, you could go out there and wheel and deal and end up with a great team in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Raiders, for me, do the off the field issues with all those players affect your decision to go there or not? Because if you just look at this season, it seems like they had, issue after issue with players getting into trouble. I think that's a product of being in Vegas. So if I've got, like, say, Josh Jacobs, for example, and he's a rock for me, week 8 rolls around and he gets a DUI and I can't play him anymore. I feel like unless they tackle these issues off the field, it would be a little difficult to try to just corral those players, because I mean, I have to imagine living in Vegas is pretty wild. And I mean, that would be a bit of a tough thing to try to just get together and just get everybody on the same page and not thinking about partying on Saturday or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point, but at the same time, I also look at the previous coaching regime that was there with John Gruden and all that. He didn't really set the groundwork for a mature team. He didn't do enough to kind of take care of those issues. You live in Vegas. Yes, it's a party city. Yes, there's a lot going on. But as a coaching staff, as an authority figure, you could set things in place to be able to mitigate these issues and to take care of any of these situations before they arise. Zach, we were both in the military, and we had a program that was called Arrive Alive, to where you could call and get a ride from anywhere to bring you back to base to make sure that you were safe. You can't tell me that an NFL organization that has literally a billionaire as the owner can't take care of something to cover a guy's Uber.
Yeah,
It's
that's a good
it's up
point.
to the coaching staff to kind of step in there and be the adult in the room.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also wonder how the NFLPA and stuff like that gets involved with that kind of thing, because they are basically, employees of the team, and your boss doesn't really get to control what you do outside of work per se. But I think in this instance, having something should be a number one priority of the ownership, because this year was terrible. I mean, I think the DUIs were really bad. There's no excuse for that in 2021. If I were the owner there, I would seriously think about doing something like that ride program or whatever, or just something, because that is an awful look.
Yeah, it certainly is, especially after the Henry Ruggs situation, and then you have another DUI incident a few weeks later. Yeah, it's a terrible look. But again, look at where they are. This is a team that lost their coach midway through the season, and that's kind of like whenever your dad goes and gets his pack of cigarettes and never comes back. The children tend to mess
Yeah,
up a little bit there for the next few years.
yeah,
Bring in a new stepdaddy that can actually right the ship and get things right.
makes sense.
That being said, we talked about the games that took place on Sunday. We've talked about these coaches that have been canned. We've got the playoffs. This coming weekend, we have playoff football starting Saturday. We have playoff games, and then we have them on Sunday, and then we have the first ever playoff game on a Monday night. Super stoked about this entire weekend of football, and I want to know who you guys think are going to win it all. Who's going to be standing tall at the end of these playoffs? Massey, I didn't get your picks earlier to put them up on a graphic, but if you want, you can just look at ours and kind of figure out who you think would be in your standings. But Zach, I'm going to go ahead and share yours on the screen right now, and you can kind of walk us through who you think are going to take these rounds.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll start with the NFC, and I've got honestly, I think, just to kind of piece it together, I think the Packers are going all the way, first and foremost. And I think their biggest threat is probably the Rams, just because they have so many weapons. But I think the Rams are beatable. I mean, you would think with the addition of OBJ and Von Miller that they would just be unstoppable. Doesn't seem to be really that much of a significant addition. I do think OBJ is probably finally getting into the swing of things, but I think they're beatable. The Packers keep just shocking the world with a 1-2 punch of Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams that people just can't stop for whatever reason. So I've got them going all the way. I've also got the Bucs winning a game, and I've got the Cowboys finally winning one. I think San Francisco does have a good team, but I think if Dak Prescott can throw 5 touchdowns again or something similar, then it'll be hard to keep up with that team because that offense is clicking again. And I think they're at the midway / back end of the season. That offense had some issues. Seems to be figuring themselves out. But ultimately, I do think that the Green Bay and maybe the Bucs will be in the NFC conference game, but I think the Packers are going to the Super Bowl. On the other side of things, not too much of a shocker here for most people. The Chiefs, I think, are probably going to get beat at some point, and I've got it here that I think the Bills can do it, but I don't know, because if you've seen the Chiefs this year, they've kind of gotten lucky and they've gotten some things go their way, and they just seem to have whatever it is, luck or whatever, on their side. And maybe they'll be given something here. But I don't think they have what it takes to win another Super Bowl. I think they might make it, but if it's against the Packers, it's going to be another tough one, much like it was against the Bucs for them. So yeah, I think ultimately, just to try to break it down to the Super Bowl, I've got Chiefs and Packers, but Packers ultimately winning.
So Zach is calling for the State Farm Bowl. They would be very happy to hear that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Massey, do you kind of agree with him, or do you think that it's going to be the Bucs trotting their way into the Super Bowl once again?
I think it's going to be tougher than it was last year, but I still see the Bucs beating out the Packers in the championship. I mean, once again, it's going to be close. I mean, you're going to see that. I mean, we've heard it all year with the MVP race. Is it Rodgers? Is it Brady? Is it Rodgers? Is it Brady? I mean, I think you go with GOAT. I mean, yes, the Bucs secondary is not the greatest. We are banged up, but I think they'll find a way, just like what they did last year. And to kind of build off Zach's comment about having the Chiefs lose, I can see them easily losing to Buffalo. I can.
Yeah.
I think that's a good call.
We think that the Chiefs can probably get by the Steelers, but that next round is going to be the harder one. You can't always depend on a 78-yard fumble return to win a game and things like that. And that seems to be what's happened with the Chiefs a lot, is they've just survived these games. I can agree with that. Who do you think makes it from the AFC side?
To be honest, just the most well-rounded team. I'd go with the Buffalo Bills.
Okay,
that's not a bad pick. I have my questions with the Bills because, I mean, other than Stephon Diggs, who do they have that they can rely on? Seems to be a bit of an issue. But I mean, they're a formidable team, so it could definitely happen.
Yep. On my bracket, I've got a bit of a shocker. I do have the Green Bay Packers finally getting over the hump there in the NFC Championship against your Tampa Bay Bucks. Hate to say it, but it's. I think the loss of those skill players is too much for the Bucks to overcome, and I think Aaron Rodgers will finally make it to another Super Bowl. But as you see, I don't have them winning it because I think those Tennessee Titans are dangerous. And I don't think a lot of people are really giving them the credit that they deserve. This is a team that when Derrick Henry went down in the middle of the season, we all wrote them off. We said this team is done. They're going to slip. They're not going to probably even win their division. We had the Colts sneaking up and winning that division. Well, the Colts aren't even in the playoffs, and the Tennessee Titans are the number 1 seed in the AFC. The recipient of the John Madden Coach of the Year trophy has to be Mike Vrabel because he has led this Tennessee Titans to the number 1 seed, and I have them going all the way to the Super Bowl and winning it on the strength of Derrick Henry coming back rested and ready to run through these entire playoffs.
That's a bit of a hot take, if you ask me.
Hey, the hotter the better around here, you know what I'm saying?
I see where you're coming from with the fact that we basically all wrote them off, and somehow they got the 1 seed, which is just wild to think about, honestly. I'm interested to see what Derrick Henry is like after his return. I think at the beginning of the season, a lot of people thought that Saquon Barkley was going to come back and just smash through people. He had a bit of a regression, and I'm not saying that Derrick Henry is going to do the same, but I think it's kind of hard to just pick up after weeks and weeks of dealing with an injury, doing your rehab and doing stuff, and be in football mode, and then be in playoff football mode. That's a bit of an ask for somebody, but honestly, if anybody could do it, I think it's Derrick Henry. He's by far the best running back in the league, and I think if he could just stay healthy, he would be breaking records year after year. So I think maybe they got lucky by being able to survive and the Colts sucking and just all that kind of stuff. And maybe now if Derrick Henry can be a just absolute workhorse for them, then they could ride into the Super Bowl, because I don't think the Chiefs have an answer for such a stout running back. That defense has gotten better, but man, that is hard to stop. And I think if Ryan Tannehill can be, like you said earlier, if he can just be a playmaker or a clock manager and make some plays when he needs to, not have to do too much, not try to throw 4 or 5 interceptions and stuff like that, they could absolutely make a run. I don't know if I'd go as far to say winning the Super Bowl, but man, you also always have to factor in Derrick Henry, and he's the it factor for sure. And I think the most valuable Titan. Absolutely.
Yeah. This is a Titans team that is healthy for really the first time since about week 6. AJ Brown is back on the field. Julio Jones is back on the field. Derrick Henry will be back on the field. This is a team that's going to be very, very tough to handle in these playoffs. On my chart there, I had the Patriots beating the Bills in Buffalo, and that's not just because I'm a homer. It's because the weather forecast for that game is once again going to be cold and snowy, and the Bills have proven that they have not been able to stop the run game, and the Patriots will be able to once again run the ball, and the Bills just don't have that dominant running game to be able to hang with these other playoff teams that will be able to run the ball, manage the clock, and also stop the run on their defenses. So I have the Tennessee Titans going all the way. It might be a hot take. It might end up being the call of the year. Who knows? But
that's true.
It is what it is. I'm for it. If the Tennessee Titans happen to mess up and win it, I'm going to clip this episode and post it all over the internet. So it's going to happen.
Would this be a first Super Bowl win for their franchise?
It would. The last time that they made it to the Super Bowl, they came up a yard short against the St. Louis Rams back in, what was it, like 99, 2000 timeframe?
Something like that.
And, it's interesting you mentioned that. I believe that was the last time that a MVP won the Super Bowl.
Right.
So if it is Rodgers that wins the MVP, that doesn't bode well for the Packers winning the Super Bowl. If Brady wins the MVP, it doesn't bode well for the Bucks winning the Super Bowl.
It's crazy that still hasn't been broken, and that's not something that a lot of people talk about.
No, I mean, everybody talked about the curse of the Madden cover for years. The curse of the MVP is much stronger.
For sure.
And I want to go ahead and touch on Ryan's picks real quick before we move on. Ryan, our other co-host, is unable to be here today. He had some prior obligations, but he has the LA Rams going all the way this year, which I find very interesting. They have been better as of late, but they had a stretch during the middle of the season, right whenever they lost Robert Woods, and they picked up Von Miller and Odell, where they were real shaky. They looked like they didn't really have an identity, but he has the Rams going all the way. I guess he's got them on the strength of that defense. But if you notice, look who else he has there in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I see that. That's funny.
So
I'm pretty questionable of that Rams team. I think I wonder what would have happened had they not picked up OBJ and Von Miller and just ran with what they had. I get it seems like they're pushing all in to try to win one, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like they had plenty of weapons, and Stafford was doing great. Everything was working, and then they just kind of fell into a slump. It's interesting to see such a team with so much talent everywhere not just absolutely dominate.
Well, the Von Miller thing, it makes sense because they did need more help on defense. And I think the Odell thing really came to fruition because they knew Robert Woods was hurt. Because if you remember, he was brought into the team. That was the big news, like, oh, Odell's joining this squad. And then the very next day it was like, oh, Robert Woods has a torn ACL. So it's like, okay, I can read between the lines here. I can see what really went on. They had a definite need, and they went out and got the best free agent guy that they could get, and it happened to be Odell Beckham. So, all right. Well, I mean, I hope at least one of us is right so that I can clip that for the show and say, hey, look, we predicted this stuff weeks ago. If we're all wrong, then nobody heard a thing.
No,
that's the way we do it around here. We bury the hits that we miss, but if we hit on them, everybody knows about it.
Right? Yeah, we're baseball fans. What do we know about football? If we lose.
Speaking of baseball, our man here, Massey, he is running his own Instagram as of now. That's doing his locks of the day. And here lately, he's been doing a lot of NHL hockey, and he plans to do some Major League Baseball as well, from what I understand. And, Massey, I want to know a little bit about your history with picking these locks of the day. What got you interested into it, and what goes into your decision to go ahead and hammer down a lock of the day?
Yeah, I mean, so going back and originally started just doing some college football, some NFL, and with the NFL being so unpredictable, I'm like, what should I try? So this year I actually started going towards hockey and just simply looking at the simple statistics of, okay, what's the power play percentage? What's the penalty kills, shots for, shots against, goals for, goals against, things like that. Just being able to piece it all together and just compare the two teams, saying, hey, who's got the better statistics? So I started off the first half of the year before the December break, hitting about 70% at the money line level, which not bad. So then I kind of got intrigued. So over Christmas break, I decided to build a betting model per se. And it's actually worked out. So it's taking data back from 2015. I could go back further if I wanted to. I just figured have at least 5-6 years in there to provide some data over time. And I'm able to show it to where it's projecting the goals for, goals against, the projected final score of the game. Give me a percentage of who's more likely to win. And then even to the point of saying what's the percent chance of a final score of 3-2 using a Poisson distribution. So
that sounds way smarter than anything we do on this show.
It really does. Can you kind of go into detail a little bit and explain what that model is and what you use to build that?
So I will admit I'm a little bit of a geek, especially whenever it comes to like Excel or spreadsheets. So everything is just built into a Google spreadsheet. So I literally go in every morning, put in the matchups for the day, and I've got it set to where, like tonight we had 3 games, and put in who was playing, who was the away and who was home. Had it compare the away attack strength, away defense strength, based off of goals for, goals against since 2015. Same thing for the home team. And essentially utilizing that data, it essentially just spits out saying, hey, this is who's projected to win.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Do you personally bet on the picks that you make?
I do, yes.
Nice.
I mean, he would lose all integrity if he was telling people to go and bet for these things. And he's like, but I'm not putting my money on the line. We have several followers in the Ready Break the Huddle Facebook group that I know they are interested in sports betting and stuff like that. And, of course, these days you have to live in the right state and stuff like that allows it. I live in Florida. We don't allow the sports books. Hopefully it's coming soon, but they keep saying soon, but it never happens.
Can you do like FanDuel or DraftKings or anything that's like online?
I can do the daily fantasy picks, but I can't do sports books.
Okay.
What about there in St. Louis, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, for me specifically, because St. Louis is so close to Illinois, where I mean, literally anything goes. We can hop across the river, and I think DraftKings has a little kiosk in a casino. FanDuel has something in a casino, so it's pretty easy for me. But for other Missouri residents that aren't so close to Illinois, Missouri hasn't passed it yet. So kind of like you, I would assume that they can do like the FanDuel, DraftKings kind of thing. But to actually just bet on a game, I don't think we can do that just yet.
Now, with that, could you just drive across the border and do it on your cell phone?
Yeah, and that's how it works.
It's all geotagged.
Yeah, somehow they know that you've crossed the border or whatever, and you're good to go. Obviously, you can also just go to the sport book and place a bet and say you want the Rams to win. You can just place $5 or whatever it is on the Rams any given week or any game or anything like that. I don't know anybody personally that is that adamant about it, but yeah, it's definitely available.
I know Harvey. He's been doing a lot of the sports books. He lives in Tennessee, and they have it approved there so that he can gamble. And I know he's actually made some pretty decent money off of it. He's always showing me his lines that he's betting and his parlays and stuff. Man, I wish we had it in Florida because I would be all over that. That's right up my alley. Especially you talked about being a nerd when it comes to this stuff. I build databases for a career. And I'm all about it. I do that for fantasy football every year. I build databases and then rank out the guys that I want to draft according to how they fall in my databases. So I'm a nerd about it too.
That's perfect.
And are you going to do the same thing for baseball as well?
Yeah, so kind of just giving it some time. I mean, season's for a couple months away, so
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. But it'll give me some time to be able to build it. Use the same format essentially, and then also take it back and kind of retest it against past games just to see how it would have projected maybe last season towards the end, maybe last 50 to 100 games, and go from there.
I think baseball is an interesting one because there's so many games and there's a lot of games on at the same time. It'll be interesting to see how the whatever you call it kind of picks the best pick. I'm pretty excited to see that. Like I said, hopefully we do get a full baseball season and we don't have to deal with some 60 game BS. And I think that's definitely something to look into. And I think betting gets people interested that they otherwise wouldn't be, especially with baseball. They have a big issue with keeping and retaining fans, and people's just attention spans aren't really geared for baseball anymore. But I think if you can place a bet, that gets your interest peaked. And I think that kind of makes you want to tune in a little bit more, and maybe you can find some stuff that you enjoy about baseball. So I think sports betting just across the board should be legalized. If casinos are good to go, and if I can play the lottery and I can do all this other stuff, what's the difference? I mean, to me, it's just a non-issue, but I'm not a lawmaker.
I'm not either, but if I were, I would also agree that I would put it into effect all 50 states. I mean, it's just additional revenue for your state to
Yeah.
have that open up.
Right.
Oh yeah.
It makes perfect sense. But I guess legalizing other things to bring in extra revenue makes sense to me, but it doesn't make sense to everybody else. Who knew?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have any locks for the upcoming NFL playoff weekend?
Um, Not gonna lie, I'm gonna say no. I am not very good at betting NFL. I mean, I can try to throw some out there. Um,
Like you said, it's unpredictable. The
I,
NFL
it,
could
it really
it's
is.
If it were me, I feel like the Packers would be my pick just as a lock. But again, like you guys said, anything can happen. NFL is hard. But
I
if
mean,
gun to my head, I think I'm picking Packers.
a
I mean,
safe bet would say that the number one seeds will not lose this weekend since they have a bye.
Oh, well, that's a fair point.
but
So
on the season,
very
I
safe
believe
bet.
I believe the Packers are 75 to 80% covering the spread throughout the season. So that's always a good go-to.
There you go. Just wait till the divisional round to place your bets.
Awesome. Well, we did take a poll of the Ready Break the Huddle group on Facebook to see where everybody else thinks that the Super Bowl champion will reside, and overwhelmingly the Packers are the majority with the most votes there in the group. And then second place, we've got a tie between the Titans and the Bucks, and down at the very, very, very bottom without a single vote is my New England Patriots. So
Womp, womp.
it is what it is. I mean, even me, you see what I voted for. I'm a realist. I can sit there and admit that they probably don't have the team to beat this year. And if they do happen to win some games, it's just going to shock some people. But they are building, and the fact that the Patriots are in the playoffs is good news for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think this last game against the Dolphins was a bit telling. I think Mac Jones absolutely needs a wide receiver one. I think for the rest of that team, they've got pretty much everything covered. Maybe you let Jonnu Smith go. I don't know his deal. I can't remember, but it seems like Hunter Henry was the right call on that one. Clearly they can run the ball. Just ask the Buffalo Bills. So yeah, I think they've got something to build on. But like you, I don't know if it's quite enough to make a playoff run.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll see what happens in the offseason. I know they will only get better from here. And, if they do make a run this year, it's just going to disrupt the entire playoffs for a lot of people. And, we talk about betting. They probably have one of the best odds. So if you're going to drop any money at all on a long shot odds, the Patriots are probably that team that you would want to put $50 on or whatever and see if you can turn it into, a couple hundred.
Yeah.
But for my money, I'm laying it on the Tennessee Titans to go all the way this year. I think they are the team to beat.
It's crazy to say, honestly.
It really is, but that's when I look at it, that's my gut. So
yeah, I mean they are the one seed, so that's you have to win games to get that. I mean, there's no skirting in.
And I always go against the one seeds. I always feel like, oh, that's a team waiting to get upset. But this is a team that's gotten better going into the playoffs because they're getting Derrick Henry back. Derrick Henry led the league in rushing for 3 weeks after he was injured.
Crazy.
Like if it wasn't for Derrick Henry getting injured when he did, do you think Jonathan Taylor would be the rushing leader? Not a chance.
No.
He'd be a close second, I think. Maybe not close.
He would be behind by 600 yards.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
There's no way he would have been close.
The Titans need to keep Derrick Henry healthy.
And the conversations about Jonathan Taylor potentially being the MVP, that was put to bed when they couldn't even get past the Jags to make it into the playoffs.
Yeah.
That is done. There's no way that he's the MVP of the league.
Yeah. Is it Aaron Rodgers' now, or are we still back and forth on him and Tom?
I mean, it's a coin flip, honestly. And like Massey said, got to go for the GOAT, but I don't know. I think Rodgers finished much stronger.
I would agree. I mean, he what threw he threw 4 or 5 interceptions throughout the year, but had 30, 36, 37 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Ratio.
I'll be unbiased, and yeah, I mean, I'd say Rodgers deserves to repeat again.
Yeah, one thing we've said on this show before is if you're going to beat the man, if you're going to be the man, you got to beat the man. That kind of seems to be the case for this year's MVP. I think we all know at this point that it's basically a quarterback's award. And Jonathan Taylor, I think, was close, but if Derrick Henry couldn't get it when he had 9 million receiving or rushing yards, then I don't think that we're going to give it to Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, another interesting case that you can make is that of Cooper Kupp. You know, he got the triple crown for wide receivers. He did something that hasn't been done in decades, and he's on a playoff bound team. He's carried himself very well all season. He was just shy of Megatron's all-time receiving yards record. So if you're in the conversation of Hall of Famers, that means you've put up a pretty good season.
Yeah.
And for a wide receiver to be able to do that, something special. But once again, I think it'll be one of those two quarterbacks that walks away with it. The only question I have about Aaron Rodgers is, are these voters going to be like, oh, well, he lied to us?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
we know one guy won't be voting for him.
one guy for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, you guys have anything else you want to add to the show tonight?
I think I'm good. Zach, do you have anything you want to plug? Oh, we may have lost him.
Yeah, I think he might be frozen. Let me see if I can find his Instagram page real quick so that we can at least shout that out. His Instagram page is LK Sports Bet. No S at the end of that. And he puts up his lock of the day every single day. And like he said, he's about 70%. So that's a pretty good odds. You know, even if you're just going to go out and throw $5-10 on it every day, it could turn around and make you a little coin. So,
yeah, sure.
Appreciate him being on and being part of the broadcast tonight and talking to us about his sports betting gig. And I hope that he has a lot of success with that. And I hope that a lot of our listeners will tune in to hit what he does so that they can start making their own money, especially if you're in a state that allows you to bet. Why not?
Right.
All right. So while we got you here, please go out, like, subscribe, and follow along with everything that we're doing. We're going to be back here next Monday night. Hopefully we'll have the full gang with us and we'll be ready to go. Ready? Break.